Is Ingrid with us? Judith, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is Ingrid H on our team?
Um, I don't I don't think
N
so.
no,
Okay,
And we
thank you.
didn't have a,
Oh,
Genevieve, we didn't have a separate way into this meeting,
Mary,
by the
if you want to
way.
log in.
I don't know
Yep.
how you would. You have to join and now you are. You know what I mean? I don't know how I would have given you a separate login.
Yeah, it made us register and like we were participants from the outside versus inside the county.
Hmm. I probably could add you as co-host on the back end instead of doing it here. So I'll do that in the future so it's easier for you. But it's the same link, so it's not like I would have had to register, but
Okay.
I'm the one host. But I hear what you're saying, and I think if I had gone into the web and added your names, but do you all have everyone's on Zoom and everything now, so that would work. All right. Well, sorry about that, and I'm sorry that
Okay.
I'm by. I usually am here 15 minutes early, but someone caught me in the hall.
It's okay.
So
Thank you, Genevieve.
we're here. It's gonna be great. Are you all cameras off? That you're part of your modus operandi?
Yes.
Okay. And do we rename ourselves? I'll rename myself. Maybe put Sonoma County at the end of my name. So, you're all co-hosts. Robert, I'll make you a co-host now that you're connected.
Okay, I think Linda Poole is not a co-host. I think she's from one of our
She's-
well drilling companies.
Oh, let's take her into the, okay, thank you for letting me know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to message the waiting room and just let them know thank you for being here. And what about the folks that are up here? Anyone else? Bill, Ingrid, Linda, June, Ben, Cara, Daniel? Any of them
Those
on our team?
those all look like folks from the drilling community.
Great. Okay. So anyway, I was saying you all are all hosts. Thank you for making sure that is an accurate statement. And you have that. I just want to remind everybody about what you have at your availability. I'll be your Zoom bombing monitor. I'll be looking for uh, people with nefarious intent and ejecting them quickly and then following up to make sure that they aren't a member of the public and don't want to be, whatever, need their needs met. We did have Zoom bombing yesterday at our
Mm.
general plan public workshop. And then we had one, in our OTS manual public webinar. So um, I guess I should say Permit Sonoma on my name instead of Sonoma
Yeah,
County.
that was crazy. I mean, we'll never forget that.
I'll
The
never forget
odds.
that. You're right. I will never forget that. Especially because we were all being held hostage because
Oh,
we didn't have the host tools,
yes,
which is what I'm pointing out
yes.
to you all right now.
Oh,
Crazy.
sorry, Jen. Alex, Mary, and Becky are all in the waiting room now. Oh, I
Okay,
can
let's
let them
do
in,
it.
can I?
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
You got the control.
Did you get Becky too? No, I got Becky. All right. So at the bottom of your screen, it says host tools. And right at the very top, when you as soon as you move your mouse up into it, is suspend participant activities. That shuts everything down temporarily, or remove participant. And when you can click that. I can click it right now. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up the people on the right in the participant bar who are problematic, and I can choose who to remove. So that's your quickest, easiest way to discontinue behavior inappropriate behavior. And then if you can always just hit cancel, and now that option is totally gone. The other thing is we have our waiting. I can lock the meeting. So like once we eject someone, we can take them out. Okay, so we want participants to be able to use the chat. We want participants to start their video or not?
No.
No. Okay. We're not going to let them share notes or whiteboards. We're not going to let them collaborate.
Do you want all of us on video?
You don't have to be on video.
Okay.
Okay.
I would, if you're willing to, I would say yes, because it's a little bit more personal, but you don't have to. And Genevieve, you were mentioning, I caught the majority of what you were explaining to the team, but I was coming in a little bit late myself. You mentioned that there's a host button at the bottom. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we
I
have
don't have
just,
that.
oh, let me make you a co-host. That's why.
I don't see it either.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
it
you
won't
just came in. We got you here. There you
it
are.
won't let me do video. It said the host has prevented it.
Right, because you weren't a host. We don't want them, the public, to be
Okay.
able to start their video, and that was a problem last night.
Yes.
So you can always just let people know that to keep this as a safe space, and I'd be happy to say that too if you need me to. But you are allowing them to use the chat, and we ask that they put any questions in there, and then can they unmute themselves? So are you okay with allowing them to unmute themselves and speak their question verbally to you?
I would say we should be able to unmute them if they want to raise their hand at the question and answer period. Then we would be able to unmute them. Otherwise, they may be interjecting when we're trying to do summary, and then that'll just derail us.
Okay, so we'll keep it where they cannot unmute themselves, and then you all as hosts have this ask to unmute button. Oh wait, Becky's not a host. Becky's on our team though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get Becky posted up. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
Yes. So, but what I was saying is this host tools is the shield at the very center of your bottom bar. When you click it, the two most important ones are right there above the shield: suspend participant activities or remove participants. And that is where you can just shut down things immediately. And we have had encounters of that both in the aughts public workshop, and we had some last night. Last night there was teen boys, so it probably was teen boys the other one too. We never really saw who it was. Anyway, so my point being is that it's not ill-intended usually, but it is disruptive. And according to the First Amendment, if they're prohibiting our business, the intended business, then if they're interfering with that, we can ask them to leave. Any questions? Final thoughts? Alex, you got anything you want to?
So I'll do the introduction. I got my little spiel going on. I want to remind us this is supposed to be a summary, so it's not a rehash of everything that we've spoken about. I'm going to start sharing my screen now, because what I intend to do, where is it? Where is it? Here.
Got 16 people in the waiting room.
Great. So, can you guys see our website page?
Yes.
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 All right. So I'm going to be guiding along here as we transition through topics. So I'll be doing that. I anticipate people will be posting questions in the chat. I'll speak about that. As they post things in the chat, if we need to have an internal conversation, we're going to use our Teams channel to see, hey, who's going to answer that question, right? Or what's the answer to that particular question? So just kind of that'll be our back office line of communication. Okay. All right. That being said,
You ready to let people in?
yeah, let's let people in.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself. Hello, welcome.
Okay, is that all of the people waiting to get in, Genevieve? Thank you very much. Okay. Um, we have started a recording here of today's workshop. So I want to welcome everybody that was able to join us today. I want to introduce our Permit Sonoma team. My name is Alex Rosas. I am the Engineering Division Manager here at Permit Sonoma. Joining us today is Darla Pimlott. She is the supervising RAHS at Permit Sonoma, oversees the well and septic section. We have Mary Allen, senior RAHS. We have Becky Vermeer, senior RAHS. We have Judas Ramirez. He's one of our RAHSs. We have Robert Pennington. He's Permit Sonoma's geologist. And helping us with some of the administrative meeting efforts today is Genevieve. So welcome to the team here. I want to mention what the purpose of today's workshop is, and that is to provide a summary of the well permitting workshop conducted and recorded on December 6th, 2024. As well as to answer questions related to the workshop presentation and general well permitting questions that our attendees may have. I do want to apologize to our customers and our community that we had a bit of miscommunication when we were pushing out notification notices and meeting invites for the December 6th, 2024 meeting. Our efforts today are intended to correct that mistake. So what we'll be doing is a brief summary of the topics that were covered at that previous workshop. We have also received a variety of questions ahead of the workshop. We were able to provide answers to those, and I'm going to post those in the chat as a PDF. We will cover those at the end of the summary. And then we will close out our presentation today with a live question and answer session. Our attendees are muted, but should you have any questions, you can post them in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, should you want to verbally speak your question, you can raise your hand to do so, and we can call on you. I would definitely encourage the attendees to review the questions in the PDF or questions in the chat to not repeat a question that's already been answered. Okay, so let me get that document ready to post in the chat so people can kind of read along. Okay. Because I can see my staff, can I get a verification that you received that PDF document in the chat? Thank you, Genevieve. Fantastic. All right, so let's go into the presentation, which again is going to be a summary of topics that we've covered. I am going to direct our attendees' attention to the website on the shared screen, and I am posting that website in the chat right now, so people listening can follow along. This website has a summary already of the presentation, so we're going to just be using that as a guideline to summarize the various topics that we've covered. So I'm just going to get into that. We start our summary with the online application process, and the majority, if not all, of our construction permit applications are now submitted online. We encourage our customers to go to our Permit Sonoma webpage to find out more information about various aspects of the application process, such as submittal requirements. We do have a webpage here for the submittal requirements that addresses all of the submittal requirements for all of the construction permits that we issue. This includes well permits, septic permits, but it also includes building, grading, and so forth. So we've consolidated as a department all of the requirements that each application type that are applicable to each application type. We've done this at least two reasons. One, to comply with the state's AB 2234 requirements, and also as a department to comply with our internal management review study that essentially encouraged us to provide more streamlined efforts, more transparent information to our community. Okay. As part of the application requirements, we've developed minimum well site plan requirements. This is also in line with AB 2234 and the management review because we're supposed to notify to our community not only what they're supposed to submit, but what information should be contained in the documents that they're supposed to submit. So we do have these well site requirements now that identifies the various things that should be shown on well site plans. This is very common in the industry. We have many of these types of checklists for other construction permits that we oversee at Permit Sonoma. The application process does require the customer to submit their applications through Permits Online. And there are various data screens that the customer would have to enter. I do want to remind our well customers that we can receive applications with up to 5 well sites. You want to have your primary, but 4 alternate sites. But we can only allow construction of one of those sites. So the encouragement here is if you know that you might have a need for multiple sites, do it on the front end as much as possible. You can do it later after the permit's issued, but that would require revision, additional time and fees associated with the project. One of the last steps in the application process as a customer is that you would be uploading documents through our DPR software. That's our digital plan review software. And that is how customers upload the required documents, how staff plan check and create issues and comments, and relay those back to the customer after review cycles are completed. Please upload documents as they're supposed to be required. And that information you'll see when you get to that particular screen. After a customer submit their applications, they're screened by our permit technicians internally to determine if they are complete or not applications. Incomplete applications, customers are notified of them and why they're incomplete, and the remedy to make it a complete application. I do also want to encourage our customers to be familiar with the submittal requirements and to provide complete applications with their submittals, including entering all applicable information in the online application screens. The clearer we have data, the more applicable information we have, the easier the permitting process is going to go. And hopefully we can get permits issued in a quicker fashion. Lastly, for me, the payment of the plan check fees is what starts the actual plan check process. Just we want to remind our customers that you would be notified of a complete application and plan check fees due to get that plan check process started. The sooner you pay those fees, the sooner we can get to review your application. Okay. I'm going to hand it off now to, I believe, Mary. Is that correct?
I think it's Becky because we're going to do.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm last, Alex.
my apologies.
Thanks
No
for
worries, no
shocking
worries.
me.
So in my part here now is about the basic plan check for well construction permits. So what it is a complete application. It basically has 2 components. One is a site plan. That's different than a site map. You've heard me stress this before. The plan includes a site map, but also includes all the data about the well construction and location. The second part that makes a complete application are the supporting documents. And within the supporting documents are locating the septic system accurately and factually supporting it with historical records and data. The second part is identifying any known contaminated sites. You do that with a geotracker search of a 1,000-foot radius for closed known contaminated sites and a 2,500-foot radius for open known contaminated sites. So if the well location is within any of those setbacks, a hydrogeologic report is required And that report will evaluate the location of the proposed well within those setbacks, and it will recommend construction features for the protection of public health and groundwater. And then the third component is to evaluate for high volume wells, and that will depend on the groundwater availability area that it falls into. If it's in groundwater areas 1 and 2, it has a 100-foot setback from existing offsite wells. For groundwater availability areas 3 and 4, it will have a 200-foot setback from existing offsite wells. And then should the high volume well fall within those setbacks, a hydrogeologic report would be required to basically recommend and defend how and why, and maybe suggest construction features that would protect groundwater and overdrawing or negatively impacting existing wells, but no setback may be less than 50 feet. So those are the basics. Back to the site plan, we do have a great guide, which is WLS 057. It's a policy, and it will take you through the steps of the site plan, which talks about a cover sheet, which is, it can be a map, and it can also be a form that basically talks about the basics of name, address, general facts like that. And then general items is a second part where it talks about with dating the plans, the sheet number, space for showing everything that needs to be pulled out, be it setbacks or construction notes, property lines, a legend, a north arrow, very important, north, and it has to be oriented correctly, and a scale. And the scale must be to engineering standards. So those are the down low for the site plan that will be submitted with supporting documents. So just those two things are a complete application. And another part to the well permit review are public trust and groundwater monitoring, which will be covered now by Robert Pennington. There you go, Robert.
Hi. Thank you, Becky. Hi, I'm Robert Pennington. I'll just touch on some of our water conservation requirements, our metering and monitoring requirements, and also the public trust review requirements. All these are new, relatively new, went into effect in spring of 2023 when we last amended the well ordinance. As I'm sure many of you guys know, our well ordinance was facing litigation. I'm not going to really touch on that. I'm just going to touch on what was approved and what those requirements are briefly. So in terms of water conservation, we have a web page off our well permits page that does a pretty good job, I think, of summarizing the requirements. Effectively, all water supply wells are required to comply with level 1 water conservation requirements. Those are relatively simple, lower cost requirements. And there's a simple checklist form that must be submitted with the well application. And the owner is acknowledging that they have complied with those water conservation requirements or will be when applicable. And then for certain well permits, there's also the requirement to comply with level 2 water conservation requirements. Those are really geared towards higher use sites. So for industrial, commercial sites or agricultural sites. So there's a separate form for those. Those are only required essentially within, for a well permit that's within the public trust review area. So that's the area of the county that's been identified as having, there's a higher likelihood that groundwater pumping might impact streams and rivers and, the habitat or beneficial uses of those streams and rivers. So if the well permit is within the public trust review area and the proposed use at that site is greater than 2 acre-feet per year, that's when the level 2 conservation requirements apply. And so similar to the level 1, there's a fairly simple form, though part of that form is the requirement for a water conservation plan. And that can be a somewhat in-depth report depending on the site. And we have basic guidelines for those water conservation plans in a separate document that's under the code 8-2-1. All these are on our website and explained on that webpage. Finally, for our, well, not finally, but for our metering and monitoring requirements, so also new in spring 2023. So any new well accepting residential wells using less than 2 acre-feet per year are now required to install a water meter and report water use to the county once per year. And then for wells that are using greater than 5 acre-feet per year, they're also required to record depth to water measurements. So that's the depth from the top of the well down to the water table when the well has not been running and has time to stabilize. So those measurements must be taken, and then those are reported to the county once per year. So when at permit intake, when you're submitting the application, if the well is going to require metering and monitoring, then we require the PJR-147 application form to be submitted. It doesn't have to be the entirety of that form because some of that is construction details of the well and the type of meter and that sort of thing. So really just need the first couple of pages that provides the contact information, and that also guarantees to us that the owner is aware that the metering and monitoring requirements will apply for that site, so they're not blindsided later. And then finally, the public trust review. I'm not going to dive into that too much at all. I'm just going to say that for a select number of well permits, there is a discretionary review process required that looks in detail at what the potential impacts of that well are on rivers and streams. So it's only wells that are within that public trust review area that would have that requirement, and only those where the water use is increasing above what its historic use and or use in effectively 2022 is the baseline, and that use is increasing beyond 2 acre-feet. So increasing use within the public trust review area beyond 2 acre-feet. And in that case, that is a little more complicated of a process that's outlined on our website. It would involve some specialized studies and also some public comment period and that sort of thing. So that's all I wanted to touch on. On to, I don't know exactly who's next.
It's me.
Okay, on to Darla.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to be touching on water well construction work and inspections and sealing methods. So basically, once you get that permit issued, the expectation is that you're going to comply with the scope of that work under that issued permit. Also, when you get that permit and site plans, that should be actually out on site with the driller. And when we do our inspections, we'll be looking to see that you do have the approved set of plans and site plans. So that's something that we'll be using to conduct our inspection. If there's any issues, staff will have to issue correction notices for anything that's out of compliance or outside of the approved site plans. And then revisions, if there's revisions that are needed, we request that you submit those through the DPR process. And hopefully you're addressing any of those before you start drilling so that we can take care of that and you can continue on with your work. And going back to what Alex had noted previously, we do allow for, one primary water well and 4 additional choices of where to drill. So we review all of those when you turn those in so that you could easily move from one water well. If that site's not working, you could move to, let's say, site number 2. And it's already been pre-approved, basically. So that I would take advantage of that option if I were you. And then scheduling inspections, you need to be sure that you're scheduling through our Selectron process. I think that's been working really well. What some people may not be aware of is that when you go to commence work, you are supposed to be notifying us that you've started work and give us a date or estimated date of completion. This allows us to get prepared with enough staffing and be able to accommodate that seal or destruct or whatever you're working on out there. And then we need at least 24 hours notice of that seal or destruct time. That's when we're kind of narrowing it down to a specific time. And so that's a 24-hour notice, and some of you have been giving more than that, and that's been great. And that's been working out really well. And I think that there's been a lot of good exchange and communication going on. Also, if the seal time, let's say, is at 11 a.m. in the morning, we do have a 15-minute grace period that's built into the ordinance. So please allow staff to get there. Sometimes we can't find the site. It really helps if we have good vicinity maps and we have somebody to contact if we get lost. But please allow for that time also into the schedule. And then sometimes if we can't meet that exact time, we may stop by beforehand or after the process, checking that annular seal depth and material that you have going on out there. And then we can also use view specs as a option in our tool bag. And that's where you would also upload pictures and videos of that construction. And then sealing methods, basically you're following the ordinance and water well construction standards. Just be sure that you have the right materials out there. If you've got water in the annular space that you need to tremie the material or pump the water out if it's less than 30 feet. And you have enough sealing material on site. We don't want to see you running out of material and then we have to wait for you to go get some, and we shouldn't be doing the inspection the next day. It needs to be taking place all within that one sealing time. So just be sure you have proper amounts of material. And then of course, bentonite chips are an option for annular spaces that are dry and no greater than 30 feet deep. So that kind of covers that in a nutshell, and I'm going to pass it on to Weld Strux with Judas Ramirez.
Thank you, Darla. And so I just wanted to summarize Weld Destructs. These are just a few reminders as someone that's out there in the field with a lot of the drillers here in the community. Casing removal. The remaining casing should be perforated to a depth of 30 feet. That is usually stated in your application. You also may propose alternative methods. I do understand some of these locations are difficult to get to, where access is limited. And then moving to B, water present in well. If water is present in the wells, the sealing materials must be placed in a zone to be sealed using methods such as a tremie device. The tremie is used to prevent free fall, dilution, segregation, aggregates of the sealing material. And then finally, missing well logs. This is more for I seem to run into these with geotechnical borings. I understand a lot of these third parties are hired from maybe the South Bay area, and we do have missing well logs for these geotechnical borings. But just as a reminder, the applicant is still responsible even if the work is hired out to someone else. And from with that, I'll move to Mary Allen for dry weather yields.
Thanks, Judith. So with dry weather yields, A lot of the requirements are similar to the well construction or the well destruct. We want to see an application that's complete. That's how things get processed more quickly if they come in complete with an accurately completed WLS-006 form, along with the well logs and the correctly referenced well permit numbers. And a lot of these things that we are listing, it's because we have seen permit applications come in with these incorrect. So we're just restating everything so that everyone can get their permits processed quickly. So with regard to field inspections, again, all field inspections need to be requested through Permit Sonoma's inspection request options. And again, the 24 hours, that's a minimum. And think about it, like if you call it in the day before, that 24 hours is for you, but we don't see it till the next morning. So the more you can advance you can give us, the better. As Darla said, it really helps with scheduling. There will be certain days when we might not be able to go out in the field and we might need to find someone else to cover that, or if it's possible to reschedule. So we want to accommodate you and we want to be out there. So that all helps us. So the site plan must be clearly identified for the property address and the location of the well testing site, including any directions or route information, like maybe roads aren't labeled correctly or there's no label at all. And so it makes it easier for us to get there. Sometimes if you can't find a location, we might be late because we couldn't get there efficiently. So anything you can do to flag the property, to get us clearly to the spot on the property where the well is located for the testing, all that helps us, and it helps us be efficient for you. The well yield permit must be on site. As with the other permits, we want the well permit needs to be on site at the well location during the pump test. And all readings, including anything unusual, any unusual readings, events, problems that came up during the test should be properly documented in the report that's submitted to us for our review. And the person conducting the test must be the licensed professional required by the well yield permit or a person under their responsible charge. And that usually means an employee, someone that they have responsibility for. And also, the person should know how to conduct the pump test in accordance with our policy, and have the proper equipment and the supplies. We've obviously gotten feedback from district inspectors that, there have been occasions where the person didn't have the proper equipment, they weren't the proper person, and they didn't record it properly. So the people that are allowed to conduct a test should be fully prepared with the equipment and the paperwork, whatever they need to get that test done properly, and not be like the homeowner or a real estate agent or someone who is not under responsible charge of the licensed professional. So that wraps it up for well yields, and I will turn it back to Alex.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, the rest of my team. Well done. As we mentioned, those were the summaries of the full workshop presentation from December 6th. It's about an hour and 30 minutes or so. Lots of great information in detail. We do go screen by screen, so it's helpful for folks that literally want something to, as a resource to go step by step. So again, if you haven't watched the video in its entirety, I highly encourage you to do so. You're going to get a lot more information that you did from our summaries today. Okay, moving on to the next segment of our workshop, I'm going to cover the questions that were posed or that were presented to us ahead of time, which have been posted in the chat. So if you bear with me, I will access those and share them. I'm not going to read them word verbatim, but I do want to unpack them, and which will then lead into any live questions that we may have. So I'm getting that ready. Okay, I think I got that ready to go. And I will be now. Okay, sharing the PDF. Still getting some, okay, getting that information there. So so the PDF that we presented here is a compilation of the questions and then the answers that were submitted to us beforehand. Our intent is to go over these today, but if we need to refine them, we'll do so. And any other questions that we field after this segment, we're going to add to the overall document that we're going to post online. I posted the link to the county's regulations. That's Chapter 25B. That's essentially what governs the majority, if not all, the aspects of our well permitting program here at Permit Sonoma. So just going to be going briefly through these questions here. I know if you can read along as well. Expected turnaround timeframes. Question was specific to geological borings, but it really applies to all well applications. And as part of our compliance efforts with AB 2234, we should be completing plan checks within 6 calendar weeks. That's initial submittals and resubmittals. We are striving to do that to the best of our abilities, and we're keeping up pretty well. And I'm just going to test to see if the links that I have embedded actually work. We have performance data also on our website, so you can track how we're doing. You know, what's the current timeframes for certain permits, such as a well permit. It takes a moment to load, but when you click on the link, it'll take you to the various locations that we have on our website for various information. And you can see here that we're about 2.5 weeks to our first checks. So we're doing a pretty good job staying under that 6-week time frame. And all the links are in there for your reference. Next question is, what's the most efficient, sustainable way to submit and pull permit? As we've heard in our presentation and our summaries, complete applications. That's the best way. Be knowledgeable about what the requirements are, package up all the documents correctly. We have site plan requirements. Just kind of be aware of that. The clearer, more complete information we get, the better off you're going to be. The easier it is going to be for us to review, and we'll process these much faster. Okay. What are permitting costs and timing? We have to go by our fee schedule. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to a page where you can download our fee schedules. They vary depending on the scope of work, so we can't provide a specific answer to that. We do generally have plan check fees that are required at the front end with the application process. So that, in essence, pays for our time to review. And then prior to issuance of a permit, we have inspection fees that we collect. And that's pretty standard with the various types of construction permits that we have going on here. As far as the timing, I'm referencing back up to our first response. We have about 6 weeks. What are the costs to have a restart? I think the context here was there was an existing well, perhaps inactive, and they wanted to get it active, likely by installing a pump. So we don't actually require permits or fees for the installation of the pump alone. But if you're going to be installing that pump and then connecting a structure to a structure, that is handled under a building permit. And again, I mentioned the fees associated with that are per our adopted fee schedule. And to restart an inactive well, it must be done by the properly licensed professional. You got your 2 licensures noted there. Question 5, I've kind of split up into 2 parts because they're very similar. What do we need to do? We need a well tester well in order to add a small studio to be rented? Can we use our current well for a new small rental home on our property? And it depends. So this is where I need to point our attention to our building standards in Sonoma County Code Chapter 7. So for single-family dwelling units in water scarce areas 4, and all second or additional dwelling units, the ADUs that hear about with wells in water scarce area 4 or marginal availability area 3, they have to test their wells. They have to do it in compliance per our policies noted on the screen listed in the document. And we need to establish at least 1 gallon per minute per dwelling unit. So there's links there for our policies. There's links there to the code and information about the groundwater availability areas as well. Outside of those areas, no, you don't have to have it tested, but it's a good idea to verify that that property is going to have enough water. How does this impact wells required for the public water systems or commercial properties? There may be more context to that question, but all the information that we've covered in the summary and in the more in-depth video, it does apply to both public water systems or wells for public water systems or commercial properties. The intent of our presentation was to cover the permitting process. Yes, so any application does have to apply for those same processes. I do want to add something here that may lead to an update to this question, and that is if there is a discretionary project involved, there may be additional conditions of approval associated with the overall project, including the drilling and connection to that particular well. We have another 2-parter here for question 7. Any new wells allowed on property served by municipal water, and what's the criteria to allow new wells within incorporated areas? Yes, we do allow wells that are proposed to be within incorporated areas and within water system service areas. But the big thing here to remember is that we really can't allow individual well to be connected to a structure that is also connected to a public water system, at least not without a backflow preventer. And that's typically that water system's requirement. And we don't want to create a situation where there'd be some cross-contamination happening and then potentially impacting or putting in jeopardy public safety for others on that same water system. If you're drilling a well and you're going to be using it for, let's say, irrigation purposes, yes, you can do that. Okay. So let's see. So how are wells for public water systems permitted by state treated differently? Again, they're treated the same as any other well application. The exception is for public water wells or water service providers like cities. And they would be doing their own CEQA evaluation to support their project. By contrast, we do, as Robert mentioned, if certain wells do trigger the need for a public trust review, this one, like, I don't remember if it does or not, but would go through a CEQA evaluation unless someone else has already conducted that and provided that information to us. Question 9, properties purchased, the water was tested as dangerous, can we drill a new well? Yes, once the county is allowed to issue non-emergency water well supplies. We also have provisions in our county code that address what to do and to treat contaminated wells. There are standards, but there's no permits that are required to comply with the code. What constitutes an emergency well? In our ordinance, that is a well that is immediately necessary to protect human life, health, and safety, or property due to sudden, unforeseen impairment in the quantity or quality of available water. So we have a bit of a definition. It's not specifically a definition because it's not in our definition section, but there are references to emergency wells there. And applications for these emergency situations must be accompanied by verifiable evidence demonstrating the necessity of the proposed well. This is also, you'll see this requirement when you apply If it is going to be an emergency well, you would have to submit a letter that demonstrates the verifiable evidence. This also is shown on our submittal page. So we're trying to list the various things that might be applicable. This is one of the situations where it might be applicable. If it is, please submit it. So they have a permitted well, but it can't keep up with the demand. Would that be an emergency permit? And the answer is it depends. So routing viewers to the answer to question 11, which I got to make a note to myself. We got to clean up the question order. A11 gives you the response for the emergency situation. And this particular question warranted a little bit of explaining what the minimum standards are for the dwelling units, which, as I mentioned before, and it's stated here, it's a gallon per minute per dwelling unit. So if there's a decline in the water yield for a particular well, it doesn't mean that it automatically constitutes an emergency. It depends on how much water it is actually producing. So as an example, if I got a well that's producing 10 gallons a minute, that's pretty good, and I have a sudden drop and now it's at 2 gallons per minute, that still exceeds the minimum. We would be unlikely to process that as an emergency because there's still at least the minimum of water that's being used. Okay, moving on. Can an inspector authorize a reasonable change to the proposed destruct method in the field? Yes, but the change in the destruct method still has to comply with their county codes, and there would likely be revisions applicable to the permit. I do also want to acknowledge to our customers that staff may not be as experienced or as comfortable in the field making that determination. So they may say, okay, thank you for that information. I need to take this back and maybe work with my supervisors to verify this is an appropriate path. And that is something that we do coach our staff, that if they're feeling like they can't make a decision in the field, gather as much information, work with a supervisor type or another colleague that has the expertise, but we do want to respond back to our customers as quickly as possible. So just bear with us there. Sometimes we don't have all the information or the experience or knowledge base to make those decisions in the field. Next question is the impact of drilling deep wells next to close but shallow neighboring wells reviewed before issuing well permits. This question is, it kind of depends. Yes, we do review impacts related to discretionary projects such as wineries. And the cases that Robert mentioned, special cases that trigger that need to review other wells. But most wells, we don't review that impact. We do have surface setback requirements. So we would want to verify at least compliance with those setback requirements according to our standards and our 25B code. All right. I want to close out this particular Q&A session with addressing our current situation with a recently issued court order. So I've had a variety of questions posed to us about why we're not issuing permits, when is it going to be lifted, pretty much what's going on. So what we have here is some basic information to guide our customers. So we were issued a court order on December 17th to immediately cease issuing non-emergency water supply wells. We can still issue all those other non-water supply wells, geotechnical borings, monitoring wells, that kind of thing. We can still issue emergency water supply wells, but we need to have the verifiable evidence that it is in fact an emergency. I know that I and others have been asked for reprieves, hardships, that kind of thing. We cannot go against the court order. We need to comply legally ourselves. This is a bit of a more severe situation than we've gone through before, which leads me to explain the difference between the previous moratorium that the county imposed on itself to stop issuing well permits. It was considered a moratorium because the county decided to take action and voluntarily stop issuing the well permits. This case that we're dealing with today, or our current situation, this is a court order, and we're not to violate it. So it's a little bit more severe in our eyes. It's not something that we're taking lightly. And again, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience this has caused. We're trying to work through the process as quickly as we can. We would love nothing more than to be issuing well permits, but we legally cannot. The rest of the information there is pretty much an explanation of what I just mentioned. I do want to add that we are still accepting well applications and we're reviewing them all the way to until we can actually issue them. So we want to get them ready for issuance as soon as we're able to do so. I also posted there on a link to our website where we have posted some information and we will continue to post updates as we can provide them. Okay, so you all have that information. We're going to be refining this a little bit more and posting it on our website. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to go to the chat to see what we have. And if folks want to ask questions verbally, you can do so by raising your hand and you would be unmuted. And I see that there are already some questions that were posted. I just want to acknowledge them. June, thank you for your question. If I start, June. Darla's replied, thank you, Darla. Yeah, either through Selectron or online is how you would submit questions or submit requests. The refunds for well applications that were paid before, it's again not a moratorium, court-ordered suspension, but you can request a refund, but it would be subject to our refund policies. If we've already performed the work, let's say you submitted the well application 8 months ago, and we did all the work, we were ready to get it issued. Maybe there was a delay in some kind of response from our customer. Chances are you wouldn't be entitled to a refund because we've already exhausted the funds through the work and the time that we spent on that work. But we would pause that and hopefully be ready to issue that permit as soon as we're allowed to do so. If customers have submitted well applications, let's say you did it on December 1st and we didn't get to it, and maybe still haven't gotten to it. Hopefully we have. You can request a refund if you really want to pull that back. But as I mentioned earlier, we are reviewing all of these well applications to get them ready to be issued as soon as we're able to do so. Let's see, Andy, is it considered an emergency if the well goes dry and the structure has fire sprinklers? Potentially, but you would have to provide that verifiable evidence. Why is this considered an emergency? Is it if it is a threat to life and safety because obviously you need the water for the fire sprinklers, that could be potentially considered an emergency. I'm going to address a situation that wasn't a question, but this is what I foresee us going down the route is, well, what's verifiable evidence? It's kind of a loose thing. And especially with our court order, we need to be very careful that we're not just accepting the letter that says, hey, this person's well went dry. Okay, we need to verify that, which means we're going to be doing site visits and we were going to be asking for more information. These requests for emergency wells will be routed to Permit Sonoma management. So what we want to avoid is situations where different staff have different interpretations or different opinions. We want to be consistent, and most importantly, we want to be careful that we're abiding by the court order and really issuing those emergency wells when they truly exist. So just think about that as our well customers move forward with submitting applications for emergency wells. We're going to be doing site visits, and we're going to be asking for more information to demonstrate that. I do want to touch a little bit on the different kinds of potential emergencies or failures. It could be related to quantity. It just completely goes dry and there's no more water coming out of that hole. Right, the pretty egregious, pretty obvious. There's issues related to quality. Something happens, the well got contaminated. Now that becomes a threat to public life and safety. That is one of those categories that we do consider as part of, yes, it's considered an emergency. Then there may be some sort of mechanical failure with the well itself, the pump, or its construction. Again, we need that verifiable evidence that that is what's wrong with the well, and that's why there's a need for an emergency well. Okay. We have a question from Ingrid. Public trust areas with high density housing applications, is a review required? Robert, are you able to chime in on that question about whether or not a review is required in a public trust area with high density housing applications?
Sure. I'm guessing, so this is a well application, a hypothetical, right, of a well application within the public trust review area for a high density housing project. And is that going to require discretionary public trust review? More likely than not, it would. It depends. We have our categories of well permits. So, if it's increasing the groundwater use beyond 2 acre feet, then that would kick it into the discretionary public trust review category. If, however, that was an existing use on that site with the same or less water demand than what's proposed, so that there's no increase in water use, then it's possible that it would not require discretionary public trust review.
Thank you for that. All right. So for our attendees, are there any other questions that this group wants to pose either verbally or in the chat? I think I'm seeing all the applicants and whether or not anybody has their hand up. I don't see any hands. And I don't see any other questions. So if there are no other questions, then I think we can conclude today's presentation. So last call. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Again, I highly encourage all of you to go through that workshop video. There's a lot of great information in there, a lot of reminders. There's some new stuff that we've spoken about that we're implementing, why we're implementing it. There's enough guidance there to kind of help you through the process a little bit more. But as always, should you need additional information or help, you can always reach out to our staff and we'll be there to help you guys. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. Sometimes I hang out like you do in a real meeting to see if people actually stay behind and ask you the question after because they're
Great.
don't feel comfortable speaking.
Fair enough.
Okay. Bye.
All right.